Hi everyone and welcome along. Now I got accustomed to doing lovely outdoor intros throughout the summer and well, I've got to put a raincoat on just in case, so hence the look. Anyway, today we are doing a celebration of the season because these are all flowers from our garden. I can't believe it. We've not really been flower growers in the past. We've got some lovely sweet peas, some echinacea, coneflowers, peroscia, lots of lovely things to paint. And it also happens to be Child Cancer Awareness Month in the US in September, and so we're going to do a little bouquet and tie it with a golden yellow ribbon to show our support. So grab your paints and let's get started. So let's have a closer look at some of these flowers in the bouquet. We've got sweet peas and some peroscia, which is rather like lavender. I'm going to group these as the sort of the lighter colours. Then we've got some coneflowers, and I can't, the name of this pink tufty flower escapes me, but we've got some much sort of bolder coloured flowers here, and these seem to be sort of a similar level of intensity. You can see these ones are just a bit more gentle. Then you've got these, and then I'm dropping seeds and things all over the place. Then we've got this lovely, really dark, intensely dark coloured foliage, which is part of an aster, which is the lovely little daisy flower, but I liked picking off just the foliage for this. So the way we're going to order this is I'm going to begin with my my palest colours first, then layer up with some of the stronger ones, and finish by putting in the stronger and darker colours first. So I'll just clean up my bit of paper from all the plant life and we'll get started. But the piece of paper I'm using, go for an A5 or a 6x8 inch piece of paper and you'll be fine. So with my HB pencil, I'm just going to draw in some stems that are all going to join in a middle point, just so I've got a place where we can tie our ribbon. And I'm not sort of thinking too much about what plant is going where. At this point, I'm just sort of thinking about creating a nice kind of halo effect of a radius of the stems, and maybe thinking about what's going to come down. That's really nice. Okay, so now I have to think a little bit more about the placement of the flowers. So even though I've talked about the order in which I'm going to paint them, these flowers obviously take up a lot of room. So if I have a think about where I'm going to place one of those in there, I think I'm going to place one at the top, sort of leaning up towards the sun. So I'll do a little cone for the top of the flower, and we'll just do a little curve there to signify where the base of the flower is going to be. And I think I'll have one a little more angled there. And maybe one more. I'll have the peroscia. Okay, I think really the best thing for us to do is just to paint, just to get going, isn't it? So in terms of painting, what I love to do with my sweet peas is to be really quite loose with them. They're so beautiful and delicate. Oh, I'm thrilled that I've painted sweet peas. We did, that I've grown sweet peas. We did a painting, didn't we, a few weeks ago of a full bouquet of sweet peas. This time we're just going to add this one in. So I'm going to pop a bit of cobalt blue deep in with my imperial purple. And I am going to just use a size 8 brush, nice and large, and I'm going to sort of fan it out on the page and twist it away to get some lovely sweet pea flowers. And you can see I'm really sort of messing around with the brush. I'm not being very controlled. I just want that gorgeous loose quality. And I will take a tiny bit more imperial purple and just add maybe a dash of it there. And I'm actually going to, this might seem a bit strange, but I'm going to go straight in with a stem, green gold, size 0 brush, and whilst it's still wet, I'm just going to add that stem in place, and I will get a little bit of sap green on it there. Oh, I've got a little ant on the page. And just fade it up a little bit until it gets to the flowers there, and I will just add a touch of a sepal. Okay, so that's our sweet peas done, because especially when you are painting the sort of layers that are going in towards the back of the painting, you don't need to worry too much about sort of tons and tons of detail on them. I want them to be nice and gentle, and there is a sort of supporting character for the rest of the piece. Okay, I'm going to paint in with my size 0 brush a very dilute deep sap green, and I'm just going to paint that down like that, so you can see it really fades away to not very much. And I'll get my Imperial Purple right up at the top. I've got just a few little tufts like that, and then as we go down, we're going to start to get the little clusters of flowers, and I'm just using sort of dilute colour and my size 0 brush to paint these in. And I think as I get a bit further down, we'll add in, we've got a few stems, maybe one more. But because I'm painting these nice and dilute, it means that they're not going to be too troublesome for other things to show up over the top if and when there's an overlapping situation. So I'm just going to fill in all the rest of these little purple flowers along this stem. So the next flower I'm going to paint is this Black-Eyed Susan, which is this lovely yellow cone flower. There's a joke Ant and I've had like running through the garden this year that I was complaining that all the flowers were purple, the growing. For the first 2 months, it was all purple, and then suddenly these guys appeared, so I was very grateful. So I'm going to get a lovely cadmium yellow woken up and just add in a little bit of cadmium orange. There we go, and that's perfect for the sort of golden petals on the flowers. I think I'm going to use my size 4 brush, and I am going to paint one up here, and I'm really wanting to get that wonderful wobble of the petals. Now, we have done a tutorial recently where we looked at how you paint petals on angled flowers. So if you haven't had a look at that yet, I highly recommend you go and check that out. You'll find that in the Flowers and Foliage playlist. And I'm actually going to do something a bit crazy. I'm going to do one that comes up over the top. So these petals have at their tips just almost like a fluted, like a forked tongue, like a snake, just a tiny bit. So remember that. Those little details make all the difference. And I am going to now just be a little bit mindful of waiting for this flower to dry before I paint in anything else there. But I fancy putting one more in down here. Oh no, maybe I'll do it there, yeah. Because I'm going to do 2 pink ones there. And the best thing about these ones is these centres are going to be so dark and concentrated that you can paint into them and over them with the yellow, and it's going to be absolutely fine. Okay, so now for the echinacea flower here. We've got this wonderful pink petal, which I think is pretty perfectly matched with alizarin crimson. I'm just going to change my water over, so I've got some fresh, clean water to get some nice, clean pink tones. And also permanent rose is always a good idea as well. I like having a lighter tone to begin with. And I'm going to paint this one in here because I'm pretty sure that that purple has dried there. Okay, so let's go. So I noticed that the difference with these petals is they start off really quite thin at the base there and then fan out really well. And then I'll take my size 2 brush, let's get some alizarin crimson quite concentrated on there, and I'm just going to use it to just sort of even up or help create the shapes of the petals that I want. And we'll come back in with a bit more layering detail for that one a bit later. Now that these flowers have dried, I can start to build up the petals. So starting with alizarin crimson, no, starting with permanent rose, I beg your pardon, and building up with alizarin crimson. And you'll find that sort of the petals will start to dry, possibly at differing speeds depending on how much wetness you got on the brush in the first place, but there is plenty of time for more layering up as we go. And we also have this plant as well to put in at this stage. And it's really useful when you're putting a bouquet together to have both your focal flowers that take up a lot of room and your filler that is just much easier to place in the gaps. So I can sort of just grab a little one there, pop a stem in, and yeah, I think that'll be rather nice. Maybe one there as well. Just break it off. There we go. So this one is a much more deep colour, so we'll just go straight in with the alizarin crimson, and I'm just going to put dabs of colour in, coming down that central stem, and we need to also think about stems for this stage of flower as well. So I want to be careful now not to overload the central bit where we're going to put a ribbon. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remind myself by doing that. And we'll get in some nice sap green, starting to think about where this stem is coming from. Sometimes the pencil's going to help, and sometimes you may just need to fill in those gaps yourself. I do quite like to make stems with a smaller brush like a size 0 and paint in a thin line and then paint in a parallel line, because it gives you the opportunity to create a slightly lighter streak down the middle, which makes it look like it's a bit more of a rounded piece. Now it's time to add in our last element of these dark bits of foliage. So I've got moon glow, deep sap green and green gold, and I'm going to begin by placing in, what do I want to do? No, I'm going to start actually with my lightest colour, because that's how we do things. And I'm going to begin by using the pencil stem to just start to put in these little leaves that are just curling off at the edges with the little extra little tufts. Then I'm going to take some deep sap green and start to bring in a little bit of extra darkness on them. All with a size 0 brush at the moment. And then finally getting the moon glow and getting that stem in there. And it's just going to catch the edge of some of those leaves. And at this point you could either paint over the top of that echinacea flower, or you could tuck it in behind, it's up to you really. And then you can just start to really sort of build on the piece, sort of look into it for more details. And at this point we're just filling up the sort of the basic shapes of the stem. So we also need a stem, don't we? There we go. And we'll add in 1 or 2 more. So now it's time to start adding some detail. You can see on that yellow black-eyed Susan there, I've already added some lines to the petals, and that's just cadmium orange, quite sort of dilute, and I'm just using it to create the texture on the petals, but I'm allowing the paint to sort of fade off my brush so that the lines sort of blend really nicely onto the petal. I can do the same with alizarin crimson on the echinacea flower. So you just want to up the concentration of colour. So it's a bit thicker, a little bit darker. But make sure your lines sort of curve out and follow the direction of the petal. And I feel like we might want to even add a even darker colour to these, maybe mixing in a bit of moon glow to the pink, but we'll get there. And we can use these low lights on the other little pink flower. So I'm just sort of scribbling the brush a little bit on these ones. Even though it's the same colour, I'm just using it in a much more concentrated manner. And it just helps create a nice bit of light and shade. And I've sort of made that decision to not add anything more to the purple items here because I want them to be more faint and in the background. So I was talking about adding a bit more darkness to the echinacea. If I put moon glow and alizarin crimson together, and I'll just go down a size to my 2/10 brush. Oh, that's rather nice. So you see with watercolour, a lot of it is about adding layers, but doing it in a patient manner. Sometimes you want to be working fast with wet on wet, and other times it's about layering or glazing, allowing those previously painted layers time to dry. Now we're starting to look at the centres of the flowers. So I've done the first stage of 2 ready done. So this one is essentially near to black, but what I've actually created is a colour here of the moon glow and alizarin crimson, but I added in some Payne's grey and it's just knocked it right down, and then some burnt sienna. So the colour for that, burnt sienna, moon glow, Payne's grey, alizarin crimson. And then for this flower here, we can see that there is some green down in there, so I'm building it up. So for that one I've started with green gold. And I'm going to use my size 0 brush to begin by sort of painting in a slightly sort of rough shape, and then of course I've got a petal that comes over the front, so I need to make sure I don't go over that, and then there we go. So we'll leave that to dry, and then this one, the green gold. So starting with this little fence of green, clean off the brush, and then just with what colour's left on it, just filling in the rest of the shape, much more diluted. Okay, this should be a bit dry now, so I'm going to take some Payne's grey that's much more concentrated and just mix it in there. I just want to make a slightly more concentrated colour, and I'll go down a size to my 2/10. And if I bring in, if I bring the flower back in, we can see there are lots of little seeds or little textures. We're not going to attempt to try and capture all of those, but what we can do is create that sort of textured edge at the top, and then just come down the sides like that, and that's rather nice. For our echinacea, we've got lots more pink and alizarin crimson in there, so we will just use the pink tones to work into the green. And then I'm going to clean my brush off and just drag that colour down in. And that makes a really nice echinacea centre. So at this point I've rubbed out any remaining pencil, and I'm now going to draw in a ribbon. So to draw the ribbon, 2 lines that sort of go parallel. So we come out and like that. I think that's rather nice. And I'm going to begin with some cadmium yellow, and I'm going to paint in this ribbon. Oh, my brush is a bit dirty there. Need it nice and clean for yellow. There we go. I'm going to leave some unpainted little shiny highlights on it there. And then we're going to add in some yellow ochre to really highlight the gold. Probably should have done this with a slightly larger brush. So great, so whilst that dries, we can just take another look at our piece up here and just see if there's anything else we want to do, whether you want a bit of shadow, a bit of extra colour glazed over the top. I like the idea of a bit of shadow, I always do, so I get my Payne's grey, and I'm just going to add just a little, but it's so lovely and luxurious, this colour. It's just diluted Payne's grey. And then if I dilute it down just a little bit further, and I'll just go down a size with my brush. It's just another lovely way to make your piece really stand out. So to finish off, we'll get the gold onto the ribbon. So you can see how I've done it on that side. It really makes a big difference. So with my size 0 brush, sort of using it to both edge and layer, But obviously the unpainted bits, we need to make sure we've got a little outline. And to really achieve things that have a slight sort of metallic feel to them, it's all about exaggerating the highlights and lowlights, more so, because think of it as reflecting the light like that. So if I take now a bit of burnt sienna, just take a little bit off the brush, that makes it even more pronounced. And you could keep going with, you could add in a bit of Payne's grey. It's quite fun to build up colours like these. Just see what you can make. But that is our piece basically done. So if you've enjoyed this, then we have so many more flowers and foliage tutorials and arrangements and all this kind of thing over on the flowers and foliage playlist. And there's something very satisfying about putting a little arrangement together on a page. It'll make a brilliant card, it'll make a brilliant sort of journal entry, a lovely way to track the changing seasons. Something I love to do. I'm just adding in a little bit of darkness under the stems, because you know me, I can't help myself. Anyway, there we go. That is our lovely seasonal September floral bouquet. Whoops. From the garden, in support of Paediatric Cancer Awareness Month in the US in September. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!